Okay, welcome back. This is going to be video 2 for the first lesson in Module 2. And again, we are continuing the lesson from earlier where we were multiplying and factoring polynomial expressions. And so we'll jump right in here to exercises 1, 2, and 3. So exercises 1, 2, and 3, the directions are all the same. We're supposed to factor each by factoring out the greatest common factor. Okay, so this is typically known as, we shorten this to GCF, okay, GCF, just like that. All right, and this is what we were just doing, actually. So when we factor, factoring really means division, okay, and so factoring out, dividing out the greatest common factor is exactly what it says. So greatest means we're dividing out the biggest thing. And then common, so sometimes the word common means, you know, it's like plain or ordinary, but common can also mean share, right? When you have something in common with someone else, you share that with them. And so that's what the word common means in this situation. So we want to factor or divide out the greatest shared factor from our terms here. So for example, we have two terms. We want to divide out the largest, the greatest amount that we can that's shared between those two things. If we go back up here just to quickly review, okay, we were looking at the 3a squared plus 3a. We saw that we could take out just a 3, or we could take out just an a, but then since both a 3 and an a could be taken out, the greatest amount that we could take out was 3a, right? And you kind of know that you're done if you look here at what's left over, and there's nothing else in common between those two terms. So let's do that down here. So let's look at these two terms right here, and what do you notice is in common that would divide both of these things evenly? So take a second and look at it. And think about what two things would divide this evenly. Okay, so hopefully you noticed here that, for example, both of these terms have an a. So we can factor out an a. If I take an a out of this, I'm dividing it out, so I'll just have the 10 and the b left over. If I take an a out of this, again, I'm dividing it out, so it's just going to be a 5 left over. Okay, if I was subtracting an a, then it would be 4a, but we're dividing an a, so it's not 4a, it's just 5. Okay, is there anything else that's left over here that's in common to both these terms? Is there anything else that can divide both of these terms evenly? And the answer is, well, look at the numbers. Can we divide 10 and 5 both by the same number? And the answer is yes, 5, right? And so we'll take out a 5 with our a that's already out front. Dividing 10 by 5 gives a 2, and then dividing a 5 by 5 leaves a 1. And so there is our GCF. Again, we know we're done because if you look at that 2b plus 1, there's nothing else in common to both those terms. The only thing that can now evenly divide both of those terms is a 1, and that's not going to change them at all. So that's our final answer. Okay, let's look at this one. So again, here, you can kind of start anywhere you want. Maybe let's start with the numbers this time. Let's look at the 3, the -9, the -9, right, and the plus 12. What number can divide all three of those? Or is there a number that can divide all three? And the answer is yes, the number is 3. So if I take a 3 out of this term, I'll have a g cubed and an h left over. If I take a 3 out of this term, I'll have a minus 3g squared and an h left over. If I take a 3 out of this term, I'll have a plus 4h left over. Okay, now let's look at our variables. Okay, so in this case, I see we have g and h. G's and h's in this term. In this term, I also see g's and h's. In this term, though, I don't see any g's, I only see h's. So can we take a g from all three of these terms? The answer is no. Even though the first two terms have g, okay, this third term does not, and so we can't take any g's out. However, what variable do all three of these have in common? They all have an h, okay, and so we can take an h out. So we'll still have the 3 in front from, you know, the first step that we did, and the h. If I take the h out of this, then I'm going to have a g cubed left over. Take an h out of this, we still have a minus 3g squared left over. Take an h out of this, and I'll still have a plus 4 left over. And now there's nothing else that we can take out in common that's in common to all three terms here. So we know we're done. And that's our final answer. Okay, number 3, last one here we'll do. So again, why don't you pause the video this time and try it on your own. See how far you can get. Okay, factor out as much as you can. Okay, hopefully you pause the video here. Again, we'll start with the numbers. So I see they have a 6, a 9, and an 18. So what number divides both 6, 9, and 18? And the answer is a 3. If I take a 3 out of 6, I'm left with 2, and I still have the x squared and the y cubed. If I take a 3 out of 9, I'll have a 3 and an x times y to the 4th. And if I take a 3 out of 18, I will have 6y to the 5th. Okay, and let's see here then. Furthermore, let's look at what variables we have in common. What variables are all in common here? Well, the first two have an x, but the second one does not. So we can't use x's, but they all do have some y's. Now, how many y's can we take out? Well, since the smallest amount here is y cubed, we're limited by that, okay? So y cubed is the most we can take out from all three of these because that's the most that all three of them have in common. So we're going to have a 3y cubed out front, which if I take the y cubed out of here, I'm left with just 2x squared. If I take a y cubed out of y to the 4th, that's going to leave me with y to the 1, or just y. And if I take a y cubed out of y to the 5th, I'll have 6y squared, like that. Okay? And that is as far as we can factor, because again, there's nothing else in common there. Remember that when you divide powers, like when I did y to the 5th divided by y to the 3rd, you subtract the powers, because when you write y to the 5th, that's really y times y times y times y times y divided by, or you can even say over y times y times y, right? Y to the 3rd. And then you can just cancel, and you see we're just left with two y's multiplied together, which is y squared. Anyway, there's our answer. All right, in the next video, we will continue our factoring.